Thank you all for attending my exhibition and for showing the interest in my work, and also for supporting HCA's first exhibition in their new space. I want to also say thank you to HCA and Molly and Anne, who were really helpful in organizing this. Just real quick, am I speaking loud enough? Okay. All right, just want to double check that before I get too far into it. I really do enjoy openings and receptions because it's a chance for me to interact with viewers and others who are interested in my work. So I welcome any dialogue after my artist talk, and I'm so happy to answer any questions that you might have. As Molly said, my name is Grace Sippy. I'm based in Minneapolis and have been working extensively at High Point Center for Printmaking as an artist, but also as an educator, teaching workshops and classes. And I've been there for about 6 years now. Before that, I was an assistant professor of printmaking at the University of Wisconsin, Stevens Point, and taught drawing, graphic design, as well as all forms of printmaking. For over a decade now, I've been interested in printmaking as an art form and have explored all of the different print disciplines. But I also incorporate drawing and photography, as well as book arts, and I think that's very present in the work in this exhibition. Conceptually, I've been interested in relationships between the mind and the body and psychoanalysis. You can kind of recognize it, but this exhibition consists of 3 bodies of work, or 3 series of work. This is Body Language, which I completed in 2020. And from here to the end of the wall is What Happened Here, and that was completed in 2022 and 2023. And then along the back wall here and behind you is my latest series that I finished just this July. So it's fresh for this exhibition and hasn't been shown anywhere else before yet. I wanted to be sure to talk about my process, as I usually combine more than one printmaking process or more than one printmaking technique in my work. And not everyone is familiar with what printmaking is as an art form. To summarize printmaking, it's an art form in which an image is created on a matrix or a foundation, if you will, and multiple images are able to be pulled from it. The process for creating the matrix and the process for creating the multiples changes depending on what that printmaking process is. There are 6 main print disciplines: intaglio, lithography, screen printing, relief, monotype, digital methods, and post-digital. But printmaking is kind of one of those unique art forms that encompasses lots of different technologies and techniques, and so some might even define printmaking beyond that. One relatable example I like to bring up every time is screen printing. Lots of shirts have screen printed images on them. And another is relief. If you think about a wood block, a flat wood block, and an image is carved from it, and you ink it up, it is essentially a stamp. And everybody is generally familiar with stamps. So, if anybody, I could go on and on about technique and printmaking, so if anyone wants to learn more, I can talk your ear off. I do want to talk about these works specifically, but not overload anybody. But I'm happy to talk more or answer questions afterwards. So my process generally starts with photography, actually, and doing different photographic shoots. And to me, I kind of think about them as sketches in a way, or at least a starting point for my work. And here you can see that there are photographic elements of domestic interiors, whether it's elements from a room or with the works behind you, surfaces of a floor or a wall from an interior. However, with body language, this series here, and against that wall, there are no photographic elements. However, those works also started with photographs, as I used myself as model, land artist, doing various things that I had in mind, and then using those photographs to then work from and create these images from as a starting point. So photography is used in a few different ways here. After the photographic phase, I select some of the photographs to work with, and usually it's something very intuitive. Sometimes it's very obvious. I can tell, oh, there's something about this image that is really unique or is speaking to me, and I might not understand why at the very beginning, but it usually surfaces as I go through the process. From there, I respond to those photographic images with drawings and creating hand-based imagery. And sometimes these are very figurative and have a sense of realism, as this body language series. And sometimes they are more abstract and very much like this back series here. I usually do these drawings on clear Mylar, and part of that is to be able to layer things together and see how elements are going to look together, and sometimes it's to assist with the printmaking process and needing the image to be on a clear piece of acetate or Mylar. From there, then, the photographic and hand-drawn elements are translated into a printmaking technique. For what happened here, it's a combination of lots of different printmaking methods, including digital inkjet, photopolymer intaglio, some have relief incorporated, blind embossment. These are photolithographs, and some have screen printed layers incorporated. And my latest series, To Speak, incorporates digital inkjet, screen printing, and I believe a new method I learned called dry pigment printing, which I'll just get into that on the side just to simplify. Anyway, but it's important with all of these elements to see how are they working together. And for me, it's often how are these hand-based elements working with the photographic, and how is that supporting my concept. I try to addition as I print, and for those not familiar with the term additioning, in printmaking, as I was speaking about earlier, there's the possibility to create multiples of a singular image. So an addition might be 10, it might be 50, it might be 100. Someone might only addition to 5, and 5 is kind of my go-to number. However, what happened here are all monoprints, which means there's only one of them. There's only one of them. And that is also true of this series here. So these ones were additioned, and there are multiples, and with these, I was less concerned with that I was less concerned with that, and just really wanted to take an opportunity to explore and create something in a new way. I did also want to touch on some of my influences and some of the themes in my work. I would say I'm most strongly influenced by the 1920s Surrealist movement, or early 1900s Surrealist movement, especially in photography, where they were doing a lot of experimentation with many things, but including the body and distorting the body, both in how they were setting up the photograph itself during the exposure, so taking long exposures or doing double exposures, and then also afterwards working with the film in the darkroom, that they were scratching on the film or they were overexposing and doing all these really different things. And I thought that was really fascinating, and I've taken some of that into my process. I'll also say that the German Expressionist movement in the early 1900s is an influence, specifically German Expressionist film, where they were creating these sets with forced perspectives and really skewing how a viewer was perceiving a room and making it really dramatic. This was also in the days of black and white, so they were also using white and black paint to create these really high contrasts. And I just thought that was really fascinating and cool to kind of create a space that embodied emotions. It's also worth mentioning, I've been interested for a long time in psychoanalysis, and especially the works of Carl Jung, and have worked a lot with thinking about identity with that psychological lens historically. From here, I wanted to kind of talk about the series individually. Like I said, Body Language was created in 2020, and context matters for me when talking about this work. It was created during my Jerome residency at High Point Center for Printmaking, and when I found out I had been selected as a Jerome resident, I also found out that I was pregnant, and so that kind of put a timeline, so to say, and other considerations in making the work. And of course, COVID happened, and so my point being, in a way, I feel like with this series I was working very intuitively and kind of just, I don't know, I wasn't sure what I was getting at until the very end kind of thing. All I knew is that I wanted to brush up on photolithography and to explore a technique using toner wash that I had recently learned, and to kind of start stripping away an environment from the work. And so I have to admit, I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect with the work, or there's at least a different relationship with this work compared to the others. I also started to print on Gampi tissue, which is this very lightweight paper here, and not only because it works really well with photolithography, but also because it is very translucent, and that was something that was really interesting to me to work with. Down here at the very end, I'm not going to dare lift it up, but on the back side of the print, these darker geometric element was printed on the back side, while the figures were printed on the front. So that was one way to utilize and play with the translucency of the paper. Additionally, you can see just by them being here, and you can see that the paper is being influenced by my movement going by, but also just natural air movement in the space. And so that became something that was interesting to me as well. With body language, in the past I've explored the themes surrounding mirroring and doubles, and so you can see a lot of, back to this piece here, things that seem symmetrical, but also an interest in the grotesque, and I think that speaks a little bit to that surrealist movement and mixing things together that are maybe not quite right. And just thinking about the embodiment of the mind through the body. So how can I use the body to reflect dreams, the psyche, hallucinations, different things, spaces that exist in our mind? What happened here is, like I said, the next series from there chronologically. So these works were all completed between 2022 and 2023. And I started to bring back the environment and the space and started to strip away the figure. And it kind of transformed, or there was this shift anyway, to having the space speak versus the body. There are some figures present, but like I said, I was starting to remove the figure in those and change its role. As I also mentioned, all of them are mono prints, so there's only one of them. And I was more interested in trying different combinations of things and cutting things up and collaging, thinking about how to layer things differently. And with these works, mark making and hand-based elements act as an energy or as a visual language for the spaces. And the thing I wanted to mention with this space is some of these marks come from the space itself. So what I mean by that is I can see it here and I can see it here and here, but there are marks that are kind of circular, and those were, I took a photograph, and it's actually these marks. That's convenient. These marks here of a floor. This floor is from this space. And so I did a drawing of those marks and turned it into a relief and incorporated it into the images to kind of help amplify the space's voice, so to say. Some of them are also marks taken from the wall or are more intuitive, coming from myself, and oftentimes they're created from maybe making a gesture or a movement of the body, and that's being recorded as a drawing or a mark. This latest series, To Speak and Muddled Chronology, as I said, were created this year, just in July. And I really wanted to think about how to tie these series together and also amplify a conversation that they could have in the exhibition. And ultimately, I started bringing back the body in a different way. And if you look carefully, you can see footprints, knees, elbows, fingerprints, different parts that some are identifiable and maybe some are more abstract, but you can tell it came from somewhere on the body. And playing around with that, but also bringing in some of these marks that I was talking about with this series. And to kind of, I wanted to touch on the process a little bit here. All of these body marks are from my own self, and if you can imagine having clear sheets of Mylar and then rubbing Vaseline on your body and trying to figure out what makes a good impression if I do this, and don't put my full weight on it, you can't push down so hard. Just trying all these different things and trying to capture a good impression from my body, and then sprinkling powdered charcoal over it to give it opacity and a darkness that I could then work with. So it was a lot of trial and error and experimentation, but I think I got some really good results with that.
It's not. It's a card. It's actually.
And with this, I was really seeing a lot of relation to this series. I think because I knew where these images came from, I knew that these were from the same place, and I wanted to give that place a voice. And ultimately, I'm pretty happy with this exhibition, and I'm very curious to speak further with you as an audience and to see what kinds of correlations you're making and what things you're connecting with. And like I said, I'm happy to chat with you after I'm done here. So just to speak on what's next for me, this year I was selected as a McKnight Artist and Culture Bearer Fellow in Printmaking. So I've been working on a new vein of work that to me feels very different from this series in terms of concept, but also visually. Overall, I'm exploring different themes, sometimes experienced in motherhood, loss and grief, the ephemeral, and a deep longing for the past. So I would encourage you to stay tuned for that. One way you can do that is to sign up for High Point Center for Printmaking's newsletters. It will be early March of 2025 and will be a major exhibition. So again, I wanted to thank you guys for coming tonight, and I'm happy for any Q&A that you might have.
How many takes did you have to do with the very delicate paper?
You know what? It worked pretty well right off the bat, and it was really exciting. I remember feeling just thrilled as I was starting to lift the print from the plate and seeing all of the beautiful detail work that showed up. So I was like, ooh, I'm onto something here. So that was exciting.
It's not tea paper. Is it like kind of more like a certain type of tissue paper?
So paper's made from Gandhi fibers, which is a plant, and it's a fine arts paper. Some papers are called tissues once they get to a certain weight. So it's not a tissue paper in the sense of you would buy it to wrap gifts or what is available commercially. It was made in Japan and
I play around with rice paper, and like people say they print on tissue paper for like collage things, and so I'm very curious about.
Yeah, it's fantastic to work with. It picks up a lot of detail, and I've also used it here. I've chincollade, which again means to paste two things together, and from here I can see kind of a sheen coming from the Gambi tissue, but it just blends in really well with the heavier paper. Additionally, it was fun to kind of collage and use rice paste to create this box-like image and create another layer that way and some texture.
Color and anything?
That's a great question. Excuse me. So color is considered, but it's very, very subdued, and it's often I'm thinking about warm blacks versus cool blacks. And the reason for that is color almost gives too much information, and I really wanted to present spaces that were almost not universal, but more accessible than being about a specific place or kind of person. And by removing color or minimizing it, I think that makes it easier to do or achieve. Also, the most disturbing dream I've ever had was in black and white, and that kind of stuck with me as being a powerful palette to work with. So, yeah, that's a common question, but I think it's a really important part of the work, so I'm glad you asked that. Well, thank you so much. If you are maybe more comfortable approaching me and talking more one-on-one, I'm happy to do that. But I want to thank you all again for coming to the talk and for your interest in the work. I appreciate it.